As we know, we have a bright future, a brighter future anyway, approaching. So I think there's cause to be optimistic. And welcome to Lit Balm again. It's our 40th episode. We started, our first episode was, let me see, on April 4 of this year, which is soon to become next year. Our next episode will be the New Year's party with Lloyd Schwartz, Christina Marie Darling, Rick Lupert, Jessica Wilkinson from Melbourne, Australia, and Willis Gordon, who will be joining us with his guitar, from what I understand. I'd be disappointed if he didn't, because he's a great singer-songwriter. So we want a little song, you know, as well as poetry. Well, poetry is a song itself, right? And then on January 16, we're going to actually skip a week, January 9. We think we deserve off, and we will be moving to bi-weekly from then on. So the next episode is on January 16 after that, and that will be the Prose Poem special, a Russell Edson tribute, with readings of Russell's letters and prose poems by Cassandra Atherton, our co-host, Nin Andrews, Denise Duhamel, Chada Nord, Maxine Chernoff, Jan Lombardo, Jeff Friedman, and Peter Johnson. So absolutely don't miss that. And then the next episode after that will be 2 weeks later, on January 30, and where we'll be featuring a number of New Zealand poets, which I'm sure many of you have not experienced too much of. So it should be quite a show. And in that vein, I'm going to let you know a little bit about one of our co-hosts, Jonathan Penton, who founded Unlikely Stories in 1998, unlikelystories.org, an electronic journal of literature and art. And since then, he's been lending his editorial and management assistance to many literary organizations, including Mad Hat, the New Orleans Poetry Festival, Rigorous, that's a journal of color online, which is a fantastic journal, check it out, and Big Bridge. In 2005, he founded Unlikely Books, which publishes 3 to 5 books of poetry a year. He's organized literary performance across the United States and performed himself. His last books are Last Chap from Virgin Press in 2004, Blood and Salsa and Painting Rust, and Prosthetic Gods, followed by Standards of Sadity, which came out from Litfest Press in 2016. And more recently, the free e-chapbook Backstories, which you can download from Argotist ebooks, run by Jeffrey Side in Liverpool, who has been very active in the alternative poetry scene for many years. I'm sure Jonathan's going to read us something interesting.
Thank you. And you might hear dogs and doorbells in the background. That happens sometimes. But we're going to go ahead and try and read. Cassandra asked me to read my Greyhound poems. I really don't remember if I've read these before here or not. So, you know, if you've heard them before, yeah, tough. And yeah, these are the Greyhound poems, but the first one actually took place on a megabus. So I trained someone at the call center way back before the bubble burst, when every poet who could worked in a call center. Between calls, he'd retype the same line into Black Planet over and over. When you coming down to Atlanta to see me? Now, this was Black Planet circa 1999, so almost all the women on it lived in Atlanta, but he never noticed that, I think. I think he didn't want me to see him embarrassing. I think he forgot I was there. The man on the bus last night knew I was there. The man on the bus knew we were all there, riding with him from New Orleans to Atlanta as he talked to a mildly interested woman on speakerphone. He wanted us to witness his good game. He told her she was on speakerphone because he was driving, but besides wanting us to hear, He was scrolling through Snapchat looking for future targets. Now, he wasn't the multitasker he thought he was, and she had to work to keep him engaged in the conversation. Finally, he said, "Are you going to be my baby or what?" And she said, let's just see how things develop," and hung up. For the next 5 minutes, we all tried to sleep while he said, "Hello? Hello? Hello?" into the phone over and over again. I think he remembered we were there. I think he wanted us to see him embarrassing, but I can't really say for sure. There are scrubs in New Orleans, but they're your neighbor's cousin. They whistle and call, but they can tell their targets apart. They know one woman from another. They don't need to ride MARTA in circles all day, looking for someone who will speak to them. They already know how to find your last name. Okay. This one actually took place on a Greyhound. Before I visited him, he wrote, "So glad you're taking the bus. I always find bus rides to be a deliciously erotic experience. The steady thrum below me, those massive engines working, the vibrations running into my ass through the seat. I always masturbate. It's very satisfying." Now, I knew what he was talking about. I know the dreams I have on the bus. I knew all that, but I replied in confusion, "You can jack off in a bus bathroom? How do you stand the smell?" I was in denial. I was about to visit him and didn't want to understand him. He didn't reply. He wasn't in denial after all. He knew how he wanked it, not in the bathroom, but in a seat, and preferably not alone, preferably while there was a young woman next to him. You know how it's done. We've all seen it done. If the woman is a little older, she'll find another woman and arrange to sit with her. If the woman is young enough, she'll wait until the bus's next stop, then ask to sit with me. I'll not assent, offer her the window or the aisle, then go to sleep and dream more private dreams. All right. If you thought that was profane, this one's much worse. And I occasionally, all these are nonfiction. I occasionally hear that, "Oh, you're a good person, Jonathan," after I read these. And if you think that, listen harder. Okay. It was the night bus from El Paso to Dallas, on my way to visit friends in Texarkana, on my way to visit a hookup in Hattiesburg, on my way to visit my son in Atlanta. I was going to need a lot of sleep, and I was prepared to do my best, but somewhere, early, around Van Horn maybe, I heard the most angelic singing voice I could recall. Sweet, light, but never childlike, gorgeously feminine, ecstatic and clear. And I tried to drift out my mind, but it focused in, and finally I heard her words, or at least her closing hook. "All you fake ass bitches can suck a motherfucking dick." She was 2 seats behind me, and I very slowly, very reluctantly turned my body around to see her singing to herself and everyone else. No headphones. No, she was definitely the author of this song. A tiny woman in her mid-20s. I know what the mid-20s look like when they come with Kaposi sarcoma, you know. I know how to judge someone's age when she's forgotten to take off her hospital wristband. I managed a couple of light naps before I heard the mean girls head for the back of the bus, teenage Texans suppressing their accents, bragging about their urbanity. They proudly told everyone where they were from as I drifted away again, pulling me back as they tried to start fights with the sick woman, who hadn't yet noticed them, but they had noticed her, and that somewhere on the road, she'd taken off her jeans. She'd taken off her jeans and walked back in her panties to the bathroom in the back of the bus. She'd gone to the bathroom, pulled down her panties, sat, peed, pulled her panties back up, while I moved to the seat in front of hers, right next to hers. She walked back to her seat where her blanket and jeans were. I, just in front of her, waited for her to notice the girls making fun of her, getting louder and louder, determined to make the whole bus notice that she had walked to the bathroom in her panties, which, Sherlock, the whole bus had, and nobody gave a shit, until she finally heard them and realized and turned around, and started to say something in that perfect halcyon voice, and I said, "Hi!" And she turned back around to me and stared. "What were you singing earlier?" It reminded me of Shirley Manson. You know, Garbage? Yeah, I know. I like her. Thank you. I'm listening to her now. You want one of my earbuds? And she took it, baffled. The Mean Girls were as baffled as she was. I don't know where they got their script, but this was not in it. So they got louder, and I was still drifting off, and I'd wait to hear her say to them, "What did you say to me?" And I'd interrupt, "Where you headed?" "Muskogee. That's in Oklahoma." "Yeah, what's there?" "My grandmother. Where are you from?" "Mostly Texas, Atlanta maybe. You?" "I just got out of a hospital in Santa Ana. It's in California. I'm in rehab, but I'm clean now." "That's a hell of a trip. Is that where you're from?" And then we were pulling into a truck stop. I don't remember where, but it was sure there'd be trouble here if I let it be. So when she got out, panty-clad, to stretch her legs, and the Mean Girls got up to fight her, I said, "Can I buy you a candy bar?" Now, the Mean Girls were talking loud, and by now the singer was hip to the game, though I suppose she would have taken that Snickers regardless of my intention. But I stalked up, and for halfway across Texas, the Mean Girls would yell something at her. She would yell something back, and I would say, "You want to split this sandwich?" And she'd turn around, smile so sweet, and say, "Yes, please," over and over until she fell asleep. She fell asleep, and she wasn't going to wake up on her own. So in Dallas, where everybody gets off the bus, I waited until the Mean Girls and everyone else was gone, and I shook her. And she tried to hit me, but I was ready and dodged and shook harder, said her name. Then she was, still in deep sleep, screaming at me, which might have been a socially awkward situation if I wasn't in the Dallas Greyhound station at 7 a.m. on a winter's morning shaking a PTSD and AIDS patient awake, though by this point the driver was yelling at us to hurry up and get off the bus. And I gave that driver a look and shook a little harder until finally she realized where she was. So we walked into the station, her apologizing profusely, and me saying that it was all just fine, let me buy you breakfast. We sat and ate breakfast, and she said things like, "I'm on morphine," and "I'm clean now," and "I have to go to the bathroom." And I said I understood, and when she was still in there, but it was time for me to go, I knocked, walked in, told her goodbye, and slipped a novel under the door. I got her to Dallas. Maybe someone would get her the rest of the way. The Greyhound staff from Dallas to Muskogee would be a little less evil anyway. So I boarded the bus from Dallas to Texarkana, and as luck would have it, the very loudest Mean Girl was there, all by her lonesome, headed for less urbane locales. I sat across the bus from her and stared at her for 3 hours. And the whole time, I kept singing my new favorite song, "All you fake ass bitches can suck a motherfucking dick." Thank you. All right. I'd like to introduce our newest coordinator, Cassandra Atherton, who's going to be reading next for us today. Cassandra Atherton is an award-winning writer, scholar of prose poetry, and professor of writing and literature in Melbourne, Australia. Her most recent books of prose poetry are Pre-Raphaelite, Leftovers, and Fugitive Letters. She is currently writing a book of prose poetry on the atomic bomb with funding from the Australia Council. Cassandra co-wrote Prose Poetry, An Introduction, and the Anthology of Australian Prose Poetry. She is commissioning editor for Westerly Magazine. Cassandra.
Hi, Jonathan. Thanks so much. That was beautifully read. I love your Greyhound poems. They're so gritty and intense. I love that about them. I was fortunate enough to read at Lit Balm in Australian Week, and I recommend people check out the kind of archives on YouTube because there's some wonderful readers, and Australia Week was pretty good. But today I'm going to read from 2 chapbooks that I've done with the International Prose Poetry Project, which is run out of the University of Canberra here in the Australian Capital Territory. And they have international prose poets join together on email and write chains of emails back and forward to one another. But they also set up some really interesting tasks, and they commission chapbooks from people, and The first one that I'm going to read from is called Meter. So a lot of people think that prose poetry, for example, in the way that it embraces the sentence, doesn't make as much use of metrical language, or that perhaps it's more hidden or obscure. But this set out to prove that you can have meter in prose poetry in kind of more experimental ways. I had a really sensitive typesetter, and I decided to play around with the line rather than the sentence. So many of these have the same number of lines. If it's an octameter or something like that, it plays with lines rather than sentences. So the first one is called Heartbreak Spondy. We leave the lights off and let the sun trace our bodies on the bed. My breathing is faster than yours, and I wonder if I've stolen some of your air, inhaled your share of oxygen, so that I'm breathing a triple metered song alongside your steady suspiration. I look for a common time signature, but find only an empty stave of sunlight striping our skin. While you are sleeping, I knock gently on your rib cage. Your heart asks, who's there? The next one is called Siren Trochee. I used to strut around the shoreline in a blue bikini, eating tuna from the tin. I used to wear scallop shell sunglasses and in the evenings tie my ankles together with green ribbon. I'd watch Glynis Johns in Miranda the Mermaid and Mad About Men and compulsively take notes with a starfish pen. For Christmas, I got a quote for a custom-built overgrown oyster bed with a pearl pillow and tucked it into your wallet. Fisherman's basket became your favorite dinner. And while I taught you how to cup your hand when you squeezed the lemon, it always squirted across the table, landing in bitter droplets on my collarbone. You licked off each spot with a tartare sauce tongue. In those early days, I wore my mermaid skirt on the weekends, the green frilly one with the holographic sequins. Each night in the bathtub, I practiced swishing my long hair over my breasts in waves, Ariel red. Finally, you pushed a pearl ring onto my outstretched finger and we celebrated with a seafood platter at the local pub. On our wedding night, I woke to find you hovering above my feet with an axe. That's the wrong Hans Christian Andersen story I tried to tell you, but the blade was descending and I was already your fishwife. T.S. Eliot has heard the mermaid singing. In your dreams, he whispers, siren warning, mermaid ahead. This one's called Haute Couture Anapest, and I love Boston. Everyone who knows me knows I love Boston, so there's a few Boston poems in here. You kiss me as the first snow falls in Boston. My orange hair is full of feathery ice crystals and your misted breath. Everything is better when it snows, like beanies with pom-poms and blue woolen jackets and clam chowder. We turn for home and I catch your mittened hand as we scurry across the common. For one long moment, I imagine us in a snow globe waiting to be shaken. You standing in front of the gold dome of the State House and me next to a snowdrift sculpted into a heart. I tip my head back and see snowflakes free falling. My words become the fine rhyme on their backs. In a Pyrrhic. I sleep diagonally in your bed and wake to find you pacing the bathroom, your feet marking insomniac time on the white tiles. You don't want to rouse me, but you can't sleep in a tiny right-angled triangle of space. I sharpen my angle and we are sleepless until dawn. The Lenox Hotel heptameter. They arrive after midnight. He fades into the mauve glow from City Bar, a lilac misted silhouette near a row of upturned martini glasses on ice. She smiles, mellow hands reaching into him as they read from the same menu. He orders margaritas with salt around the rim and marvels at the bartender's heavy pour. For a moment, he forgets and kisses her full on the mouth, their skin bruised with fleeting intimacy. They devour pizza from a wooden board, and after 2 more cocktails, he orders clam chowder to their room. She thinks the whole world must see their violet longing. He tells her, desire is different, wanting's not the same thing. The yellow rose of Amherst common meter. In the cooling aftermath, I become glassy rock, my palm covering the last place you kissed me, sparing it from destruction. Once I occupied the spaces between your ribs, dwelt in the thick absences between embraces, but broken language ignited a fire that marched beneath my skin. I am more than your pilot light. I am subtle as a volcano. When you find me, there's a pocket of hot air beneath my igneous palm. Scansion. The third night, we drink too much tequila and you sleep on the edge of my hair until noon. Your body curled around me like a single right parenthesis. I feel your breath on the rounded curve of my shoulder, respiration like a steady metronome. This is my happiest hour, 3/4 of a king-size bed behind us, my toes a series of ellipses under the sheet. And I'm just going to finish with 2 poems from one of the other experiment projects. This one was a lot easier. We all got given a color, and my color is yellow, which is interesting because my favorite color is pink. And when I was little, apparently I was drawn to yellow, but my grandparents said they didn't like the color yellow, so they didn't let me wear it. So I feel like I've, subversively got yellow flowing through my veins. So this one is called Pollen. I tore up the pages from my journals when I got sick, destroyed 2 decades of thoughts in one afternoon. Cursive writing in thick fountain penned loops filled the kitchen bin until all that was left were book covers. In a hospital bed, I fixated on the blank walls. I sent you a photo of nothing, and you sent me photos of boats and colored lights on water. They kept me company at midnight and 4 a.m. when the nurse came to start the drip. Your travels lit up my caliginous space, always out of my reach. When my mother brought calla lilies in visiting hour, I didn't tell her they were funeral flowers. Instead, I remembered long tropical afternoons with you, pollen from iridescent stamens staining my hem yellow. And the last one's called Iced Doughnut. So I quite like the odd donut, and in Australia, when we have no coronavirus cases, they call it a donut day, and people have been eating donuts. But I think after 47, it would become quite tiring to have a donut day every day. But anyway, this one's called Iced Doughnut, and it's the last one. On the 5th morning, you buy me a yellow iced donut at the airport, but I'm not ready for closure. I can still feel your hands now cupping your coffee, cradling my breasts. My absence insinuates itself between us. You embrace me in past tense, stripping your flesh of my scent and returning my heart in a plastic bag. I want to tell you that terminal is a terrible word, but I take a sip of your coffee. When the plane is delayed, I contemplate another donut, but the moment has gone. You have your ending. Thank you for listening. I'm going to introduce, I think, Marc Vincenz to read next. Marc Vincenz is an Anglo-Swiss American poet, a fiction writer, a translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. There is nothing this man can't do. He has published 14 books of poetry, including more recently, Becoming the Sound of Bees, Leaning into the Infinite, The Syndicate of Water and Light, and Here Comes the Night Dust. Vincenz's newest collection, The Little Book of Earthly Desires, and a novel set in ancient China, The Three Taos of Tao, or How to Catch a Fortuitous Elephant, are both forthcoming in 2021 from Spite and Dival. An album of music, ambience and verse, Left Hand Clapping, is also forthcoming from Tree Torn Records. Vincenz is also a prolific translator and has translated from the German, Romanian, and French. He has published 10 books of translations, and most recently, Unexpected Development by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist Klaus Mertz, White Pine 2018, and which was a finalist for the 2016 Cliff Becker Book Prize in Translation. His translation of Klaus Mertz's selected poems, And Audible Blue, is forthcoming from White Pine Press in 2021. His poems have been published in amazing journals, including The Nation, Plowshares, the Los Angeles Review, World Literature Today, Raritan, Asymptote, and plume. His work has received fellowships and grants from the Swiss Arts Council, the Literary Colloquium Berlin, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Whitner-Brinner Foundation for Poetry. Vincenz is editor and publisher at the amazing Mad Hat Press and publisher of New American Writing. He's lived all over the world, from Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but now lives on a farm in rural Western Massachusetts, overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain. And I always say, join in if you're a regular, where there are more coyotes and bears than there are people. Thank you, Marc.
Thank you, Cassandra. This little selection comes from a new book I've been working on called Einstein Fledermaus. 1. Einstein. Georg once said that hole on the edge of the galaxy is not black, but something else, more a collector of artifacts, each with its own sheen. He was a fool. I was too. The plum is by far the most sensuous fruit in the kingdom. The apple is a mere pale of a thing, and the brandy, well, no comparison. The heart of the fruit is what makes it breathe. Believe me, makes you breathe. The question is, I always said, was, what was its intention? Intention is the key word here, not in a roundabout way or in some mutterings at the bar over some plum wine or apple brandy. Try it with a cigar. When your hair is out to here, try it almost as an intervention. And the thing is, I'm not trying to push words into your mouth or into your mind. I'm simply saying it as it is, or so is my intention. 2. The patent lawyer had it wrong. Francesca, Georg's sister, had the following to say in her somewhat sinister way. We were all forgeries, she said, then turned to the balcony that looked out on an empty dock. The swishing of the waves was a dead giveaway. It was her inclement way of saying, this doesn't have what it takes. And I said, Vendetta gets the better of you, my sweet rabbit. Even when you part your lips like a colon, there's little at the end of it. No hyphen, simply a word, circumvention. If that was just the end of it, I should have been surprised. I shouldn't mention the honors I'm now conferred. The laurel leaves about my ears, as if we still had a Senate majority or a judiciary. If we still had all those shrunken heads that Pa brought back from the Philippines, and that those old souls might convey, withholding all their pink slips, a modicum of fantasy cum factum. Who cares? It's all made up anyway. 3. Listen to the drums. The glances that survive are these, a fluid motion, really. Clearly one that says this geographic frenzy stops the slightest flickering of the lashes. I know you wish to be the belle of the ball. You know, of course, the body of the state is tied up in you. Nothing can be given away. Show me your barcode and the secrets it keeps. 4. All the stops. Those enormous myths of the sheep and the man and the cow and the cowl. Forget the man, more to the sea, over the mountain, dale and creek, more to graduations, or to the geographic tongue or the archipelago of mind time, space, the mythological frontier of civilization, and the stars, or the cow leaping over the moon, or the stork on its way with the newborn, or the man in the moon who is a rabbit or hare, who passes messages to those of us who cure or care to hear, and yet here I stand, not enormous, but small, living in the longing. 5. A short meditation on birdsong. All the models of creation were concerned with meaning and purpose, at least in this human's mind. All those floating hands, the blessing conferred. But for a moment, just listen, find your logging. All the models of creations are metaphors. All those waves sweeping space, trying to find a melody. All those words simply a place in place of your harvest. All those feathers, the wings leading up. All those longing fingers over the mountain via the mailman. The words, the language of the birds. In truth, a model emanation with meaning and purpose. And so the day flew by, and all here gathered sun high. Rain in the nodes, simply a place to put your harvest. And 6, and remember this is from Einstein-Fledermaus, quantum theorem. If X equals Y, then Y equals the sum of all oil. How could it not have come into existence? The point is Y equals Y, obviously. So how could X be the sum of all existence? Thank you. And of course, we're dying to hear from Larissa Shmailo, our co-founder and co-curator, who is a poet, novelist, translator, editor, and critic. Her new novel is Sly Bang from Spite and Dival. Her first novel was Patient Women from Blazevox. Her poetry collections are Medusa's Country from Mad Hat, # Special Characters from Unlikely Books, In Paran from Blazevox, and the chapbook A Cure for Suicide from Cervena Bava Press, and the ebook Fib Sequence from Jeffrey Sides Argotist eBooks. A new poetry collection, Dora Laura, is forthcoming from Salmon Poetry, Jesse Landini's press. And her poetry albums are The No Net World and Exorcism, for which she won the New Century Best Spoken Word Album Award. Tracks are available from iTunes, Spotify, etc. Larissa's work has appeared in many anthologies, including Measure for Measure, an anthology of poetic meters from Random House, Penguin, Words for the Wedding from Penguin, a contemporary Russian poetry from Dalkey Archive Press, and many, many more. She's also the original English language translator of the first futurist opera, Victory of the Sun, performed at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the Garage Museum of Moscow, the Brooklyn Academy of Music and Theaters and Universities worldwide. And she's also edited the anthology of 21st century Russian poetry that came out with Big Bridge Press a few years ago. And she's been a translator on the Russian Bible for the Eugene A. Nida Institute for Biblical Scholarship of the American Bible Society. Larissa's mission in life is to help mentally ill people through writing. Let's hear some of your new work, Larissa. I'm dying to see what you got.
Okay. Thank you very much. Listen, open micers, we have some slots open for the open mic, so please chat us up if you would like to read in the open section before we hear from Grace Cavalieri, Joshua Corey, and Kayla Rodney, which is an exciting show that we're having. All right, let me start. Here's a poem. Like a dead leaf lifted from the scorched summer earth, now wet and almost green. Like a dead leaf carried by a thundercloud and brought to water by wind. I am here in the eye of the storm, dizzy, motionless, suspended in the humid air, waiting. Trees tremble. I breathe slowly. I have known tempests, squalls, and gentle rain. You are my first hurricane. For 6 months with you. For 6 months with you, I would quit my lover, leave the city, sell my books. For 6 months with you, I would live in Kansas, join a carpool, shave my legs. For 6 months with you, I would be an actress, wait on tables, burn this poem. But what if it doesn't work out? If it doesn't work out, I'll join a convent. If it doesn't work out, I'll cut my hair. If it doesn't work out, I'll leave the country. If it doesn't work out, I still don't care. For 6 months with you, I would break the true law, break my poor heart, break my vow. Now, ask me what I do for a year or two. Madwoman. Here I am again, walking among these vague and tepid people. They evoke a slight feeling of distaste in me. They smell my pain. They have no idea. I just hold my phone, the cellular phone I use for a disguise, and I talk to the ultimate answering service. I walk and I talk to God. When you died, I ripped the electrodes out of my skull and ran away from the land of cables and TV sets. Great battles of television were fought here. Great battles were lost. Soho's no different from uptown or downtown. It's all money and talking and bars, sex and cars, job, job, job. So I went to see the trees. The trees were luminous, the leaves forming patterns of light on the ground. And as the light played on my hair and my cheeks, I realized no one ever dies. They just become trees. Even Marilyn Monroe was alive in a leaf. I saw for an instant your face, all a quiver in the shaking of a fern in the light of the wind, and I kissed the trees. So I knew you were not dead, not really. You would not be so cruel as to die, really die. Under the West Side Highway, I met all the men who lived there and one girl. She was 22 and pregnant and had AIDS. I didn't stay long, but I stayed long enough. Under the West Side Highway, I slept with Jesus in a cap, talked madman Spanish with Tito and the dirty apostles, knew there would always be enough loaves and fishes for me, knew no matter how hard it got, I would always be safe and held near, close to God. It was my destiny to be greatly loved. I chose then to be close to God, to throw away my clothing and be close to God. There were times when not even a shirt came between me and God. Under the West Side Highway, I spoke to Jesus, his face always changing. Now Alex, who lived in a tent near the wall, now Panama drinking wine, now Juan in his tin and cardboard hut. You followed me, watched me, you were worried. How would I get home and back to the life I had known? And I said, look who's talking, you died after all. It's hardly for you to criticize me if I go off the beaten path a little too. And as for the others, they worried too, unknown to them, the protection that I had and had always had. I said to them all, don't worry, I will love you, pray you home. Look, can't you see I am your guardian angel? And you thought I was just homeless and mad, as though God hadn't made the whole world just for me. Well, now I'm cured. I go to the bank, I take pills, I sit in restaurants, have a job, I worry about money and whether my new boyfriend has AIDS. We don't even have sex. He's too busy with his job. It's just as well. None of these men have anything that would compel you or keep you through the night. It's just banging bones after all. You see, very few men have souls and very few men have courage. The few who have the courage to follow their souls are mostly all dead, lost in leaves. People kill them, you know. I don't know anymore. I take pills and talk into the cellular phone. Sometimes I think I hear your voice. Sometimes I think I hear you, but no, it's just the pills. I get a hum in my ear. It's not you. I know you are not dead, but you're not here either, and I miss you. I'm cured, so they say, but you can't ever really take the gift of madness away once you have been stripped by God of everything, clothing, family, freedom, senses. You are his for life, and I was stripped, oh yes, dear Lord, of everything. every last thing. God took everything, leaving only my soul, but I found that that was enough. And you people think you have things, but really the next breath you take is the only thing you have. So how different are you from me? Look at us again, we the homeless, and see us for who we are, the archangels of God. You cannot take the gift of madness away. I will always know about trees, will always see the arch of my lover's neck and the patterns of their light. I will know the patch of sky between the birch tree and the willow is him, his azure face, and I will always hear the voice of God wherever I go. No pill can block him out. No TV set can drown his voice. No fool can block the face of God from me. Look at me, madwoman. I am Magdalene. I am Joan of Arc. I am Saint Marilyn Monroe, and I will always be your angel, baby. I will always be your saint. Pray to me. Thank you. And I would like now to turn it back over to my co-host, Marc Vincenz, who will be introducing our features for the evening. Marc, take it away.
Thank you, Larissa. That was astounding. But I'm delighted tonight to present our feature, which includes the fantabulous Grace Cavalieri, the fabulous Joshua Corey, and the more fabulous Kayla Rodney. Sorry, Josh. Anyway, so we'll start off with Grace, who is the author of many, many books. Her latest book is What the Psychic Said, which came out this year. And her latest play was Quilting the Sun last year at New York in the Theatre for the New City. Grace is the founder of The Poet and the Poem for Public Radio Now from the Library of Congress. And she celebrates 44 years on air. We're delighted to have you, Grace. You're still muted, I'm afraid.
Now am I muted?
No, you're good now.
Okay, thank you, Marc. Those were incredible readings. I'm going to read from a book called Other Voices, Other Lives, which came out not long ago by a great publishing house called Allen Squire, because they publish a series called Legacy series for poets who write in more than one genre, which seems like everyone here does. But this book has excerpts of my poems, books, about 6 books of poems and 3 or 4 plays and some interviews with poets laureate. And I'm going to start, I write about women in history a lot, and I like to vindicate them, like to change the story. And I'll start with Mary Wollstonecraft. Now, many of you might have seen this new statue that just was unveiled at Newington Green in England. And, here she has spent her whole life, sacrificed everything to prove that women were intellects and should be regarded as surely equal, at least given an education. And the statue they produced is a naked woman with a body that looks like a Barbie doll that could be the front of any tabloid. So I'm still recovering from this. But my book about Mary was called What I Would Do for Love. And the play about her, which was in New York, this was called Hyena and Petticoat. So I'll just start and read a couple of these poems. She was born in 1759, and she was taught reading by the Reverend Clare down in the village. Now, in my play, I have him trying to seduce her, because in a play, you have to have a little more going on. But poetry, you don't have to have so many twists and turns. So this is called Dear Reverend Clare. And this book is in her name, in her voice. Dear Reverend Clare, you ask if hope gets me up in the morning. I say yes. Not in your house where everything exists, but in mine where all things are lost. The top latch takes the way to the door, and so it is true as I teach Liza and Everina all that you teach me. You say my child's sense of wonder is coupled with a grown person's knowing grief. And why shouldn't it be? You are talking to a girl with a pencil hidden in a broken cup on top the highest shelf, stained by curdled cream, behind a ceramic pitcher where it cannot thrown away. Of course, she had a scornful father and several brothers who made life miserable. So she tried to be a governess and did terribly at that because she taught all the little girls that they were as good as the little boys, and she got fired from every job. But she went to London to try to be a writer with 12 quid in her pocket. Now, I would not want to go to New York with $10 right now to try to be a writer, not knowing anyone, but Mary Wollstonecraft did. And if it were not for Joseph Johnson, her publisher, we would not have had the beginning of the feminist movement, I believe, because Mary would not be known. So he allowed her a column in the newspaper. She wrote letters to Thomas Paine, to every notable of the day. She wrote argumentative prose. And Mr. Johnson, this is a letter to her, from her to Mr. Johnson. Uncommon kindness is what I call you instead of publisher, telling me that I am the first of a new genus. I tremble at the attempt. We must not, on any account, inform my brother or father, for ridicule has always been the unfriendliest advice. The October winds blow through London, yet I hear only words exhorting my mission. I must be independent. When a writer writes, the words are taken by the reader, but they always belong to the writer. This body, an unwilling recipient for spirit, finally fills with a breath of confidence because of you. My luck is changing. Today I stubbed my toe and to the breaking said, thank you, life. I feel something besides terror. I have a body, a mind, a heart. I invite the world to lay its head on my stomach and listen. Now, she had many failures, and she wrote the Vindication of the Rights of Women, but this absolutely made her life more horrible. The women coalesced against her, and their husbands took it out on the women. They said she had made their lot worse, and it broke her heart because she really thought, if not the men would accept her, surely the women would. And she jumped off the London Bridge into the Thames River, and her skirt lifted her up and kept her from drowning, and some fishermen found her. So this is called Even Death Does Not Want Me. 3 weeks in bed, I cannot even plan a suicide, well, it seems. Dear diary, you are all I have. Liza and Everina suffer because of my act, a death gone wrong. Leaving me in this life as cold as the water, I remember the lifting. I closed my eyes and felt the sweet, a swirling of relief, and then the noise, the lights, the clamor, cold cobblestones, people in a circle looking down, the bright lanterns, a rough blanket, a loud voice in my ear. Ain't that funny? Was her skirts that saved her, billowing up around her ass. And then a woman. Now she'll sing twice of wearing pants. She was in the village and had actually overheard, well, I imagine this. This is all factually true, but of course, filtered through my imagination. And this is what I imagine she heard. It's called Overheard Today. A vicious sound. Famous lady with her book telling us how to act. I could not hear the rest and leaned in closer to the murmuring until she straightened, and then I saw she spoke of me, Mary Wollstonecraft. She held my book Vindication and shook it at her partner. My face flushed. Were it a man speaking, I would not crumble, but now I fear my dream is uninhabitable. All women are in danger unless we pick the bough from the trees ourselves. Yet a woman was condemning me in a public place. Why not grant me the courtesy given male authors, saying it is controversial? Her fury ascends in my body. She said I made her quest for survival all the worse because I can read and write. Does that give me a masculine mind or just a mind? Now, after Mary Wollstonecraft, there was nowhere to go but Anna Nicole Smith, another hero of mine. I don't know how many of you remember her. She was a model for Guess Jeans, and then she had a baby and no one knew who the father was, but I really loved her. She had less support than Marilyn Monroe, which I heard some marvelous poems by this poet who's here tonight last week about Marilyn Monroe. Anna Nicole had less support system than Jane Mansfield and Judy Garland, than anyone. She was really subject to men filling her with drugs and propping her up like a buffoon. So I wrote a book called Anna Nicole Poems, and then I wrote a play, which was in New York, called Anna Nicole Blonde Glory. And you'd tell by the title that I changed the ending and I gave her a happy life, a baby, a doctor for a husband, because writers can do anything they want, right? So this is, I'll read a few poems from Anna Nicole. And the first is called Anna's Estate. At the half-star hotel, her lower lip is painted bigger to match the dreams of being a star. She blessed the lumpy beds, bought her own silk sheets. This was before the moral issues, the legal issues, the spirit of the law, the letter of the law, the causes of death, junkies, drug addicts, probable criminal cause, bodies exhumed, frozen sperm, mystery sons, living in sorrow, wrongful death, living in sorrow, wrongful death, undue influences, before the opalescent ocean, where she could never find the truth of things, where she wanted a photo album so bad so she wouldn't die without memories. One day, standing at the continental breakfast, dragging her sleeve in the jelly, someone walked in, touching her waist like a prayer, like an enfranchisement, and she was on her way, in a dress made for someone much smaller, trusting a stranger, because he said, the good Lord can't see what happens in Hollywood. And indeed, the good Lord did not see. So here we have her in a room with her handlers, and it's called Notes from a Distant Glacier. Interviewer, do you want to be someone of worth or do you want to be famous? Designer, if they photograph you nude, it's called art. Critic, they should project her on the wall, the one way far behind us. Trainer, in life there can only be one winner. Mother, would you please sit like a normal person? Manager, take a pill, for God's sake, any pill, just do it. Doctor, no medicine can stop you from feeling. Lawyer, don't even think about it, Anna. Death doesn't care about you. You owe it to the world to make it pretty. Director, give them heart, give them breast. Lover, being a blonde beauty doesn't make you a whore necessarily. Anna looks out the window. She sees the pink azaleas outside, so pretty, that color, so perfect. It must be fake. And this next poem is called And Even More Than That. Anna was tired of her coloring book. She took a big fat crayon and wrote shit all over the white wall. Then the pavement outside, shit, shit, shit. She knew now what it was to be a writer. Maybe it felt good, cleaned out. Maybe she could write a whole book with her red crayon. That night she went out to dinner with the old man. He brought his daughter along. He held his arm around the dolly so tight. Anna tried to pry his fingers off, but it was no use. Her hunger flapping like a wet towel, not his actions that saddened, but the flat, wet hand of grief against the hot cement of her heart. That's why she was glad she was now a writer, insinuating herself upon the world, having her say. Therapy. The fat therapist in a red jumpsuit asked what made each one happy. Anna said a hit of Coke and a shot of tequila. Then she flushed hot, everyone laughing. She thought she was allowed to tell the truth, how she lied on the manager's expense sheets, slept with people's husbands. She thought she could unburden the grief, but now she would shut up. Hell with this. Lucinda could just bring back her makeup kit and her Vera Wang gown. Anna stormed out. The sign on the doctor's door: if you walk through hell, you can climb your way to paradise. Dante. Well, she would make an appointment with this Dr. Dante and settle his hash. The last poem about Anna is called Where Love is Meant.
Grace, can
Yes.
you make sure to lean in? You're sort of going in and out a little bit.
Oh, can you hear now?
Yeah, yes, now it's good.
Only one light is on my microphone instead of two, which was sort of scary. Where love is meant to be. The gardener told Anna Nicole he could build a small temple where the compost was once housed, now removed, as nothing would grow on that hard earth anyway. Anna said yes, she would like a small shrine of her own, something bright and shiny with a little cement on the ground, with a gold star in it with her name. She was not the best businesswoman, having failed typing, but she could charge admission and would be kind to herself and mount only those photos of men who did not humiliate her, also some animals she rescued, or maybe just the animals. The idea of singing came up, and she had a good feeling about that. She wanted so much to write a song about why what they did to her did not kill her, but she would have to figure out why first. I'm going to finish with two poems of my own because I am a woman, so I can talk about women in history. And one is from my book, The Man Who Got Away, about my husband. I had a marriage of 60 years, and my husband died not long ago. And this poem is called Mechanical Physics. I never knew how to put two pieces together. Say the garden hose, for example, its nozzle undetectable. I flooded the new coffee pot because the sections didn't quite match. Can you imagine how hard it was to convince myself I could do anything with more than one panel? I didn't even try. IKEA sent furniture in boxes, all marked 44. I could feel the lessons yet to learn, the escape from reason. I could feel my human failure before UPS left the house. Now, in the lightness of the last of this day, how do I know who will hold me at sunset? I cannot make the alive and the dead parts come together as we once were. I cannot match the seams, square the ending. And I will finally read Work is My Secret Lover. Mark, is it audible now? Work is My Secret Lover has an epigraph by Paul Zimmer, which says, Jasmine even refer to sex as work. Some primitive people believe that death is work. That's Paul Zimmer. And the title is Work is My Secret Lover. Work takes the palm of my hand to kiss in the middle of the night. It holds my wrist lightly and feels the pulse. Work is who you'll find me with when you tiptoe up the stairs and hear my footsteps through the shadows. You'll see me lift my arm to stretch and then lean down to put my head to it. Work threatened to die once for all that was left unsaid. So I took to it like a young bride, flushed with excitement. Adultery too, yes, I admit it. On the holidays, when others gathered at the table, I was dreaming of it, making love to the movement of paper, the words for my lips, the feel of it. Sometimes when company came, I threw a tablecloth over my work and set the plates, and everyone acted as if nothing were visible, pretending I was the good hostess that I was. One on the Christmas tree, work waited patiently among ornaments gleaming like a groom. I am guilty as charged, for nothing else could buy my feelings, and why would I sell the only thing that ever loved me the way I love back, but my beautiful, long-lasting, faithful lover, my friend who will never leave. Thank you very much.
Beautiful, Grace.
Thank you.
And next up we have Joshua Corey, who is a poet, novelist, translator, and critic. His books include the poetry collections Severance Songs, The Barons, and the soon-to-be-released Hannah and the Master from Mad Hat Press, which is a meditation on Hannah Arendt. So for those of you who are interested, it'll be coming up very soon. A collection of critical prose, Transcendental Circuit, Other Worlds of Poetry, a new translation with Jean-Luc Garneau of Francis Ponget's first book of prose poems as Partisan of Things, and a novel, Beautiful Soul, an American elegy, which I believe came out with Spuyten Duyvil Press. And with G.C. Waldrop, he co-edited the Arcadia Project, North American Postmodern Pastoral from Asadada Press in 2012. He lives in Evanston, Illinois, and teaches English at Lake Forest College. Welcome, Joshua.
Thank you, Mark. And let me also thank Cassandra, Larissa, and Jonathan for hosting and inviting me and running this wonderful series. This is my first ever Zoom reading, so bear with me. I'm going to start with a very brief Chicago poem. Turning on Cicero. Turning on Cicero, the old man on the median with the church basement painting of Jesus in his hands. Who's that? My daughter doesn't ask as we drive by. And I'm going to read another poem from one of my several manuscripts that lies scattered metaphorically on the floor, which I think even if you've never been to Cards on the Table here, a 12-step meeting, after the year we've had, you might find it a little bit resonant and at the same time kind of strange because it describes a snus that most of us can't enjoy right now. So it's called, We Admitted Our Lives Had Become Unmanageable. In the boxed wine section, in flight from paper streamers, in mid-air under hot lights, we opened our faces to one another. Under the ceiling fan, under suggested donations for coffee, under the superfluous weight of churches, we squeezed our hands. Together we froze the hour. Together we addressed the chair. Together we were huddled mammals licking one another's scorched fur. As the contrails crossed our minds, as the emptiness of the past asserted itself, as marriages gone bad or stale, swiped left or right with evolution. Beside the man or woman who speaks for us, we twisted Kleenex into rags. Beside ourselves, we refused comfortless comparisons. Back of the unseeable face, back of the color of the book, back of the wisdom of praying to nothing and nobody in our lives. And I'm going to read 3 prosy poems from Hannah and the Master, which Mark mentioned, and which I'm very excited to finally see this book come to life, courtesy of Mark and the other good folks at Mad Hat Press. It's been something of an odyssey getting this book out there. It is a meditation on Hannah Arendt, and more specifically, it's a kind of science or speculative, science fiction or speculative recreation of the notorious affair between Hannah Arendt, the Jewish political thinker, and Martin Heidegger, her teacher, illicit lover, one of the greatest philosophers of the 20th century, also a Nazi. The master figure, and some of you might also think of Paul Celan's Death Fugue. Death is a master from Germany, right? Der Tod ist ein Meister aus Deutschland. Celan, Simone Weil, Walter Benjamin, all of these figures sort of haunt the book, which reimagines the plight of the 1930s and 40s as basically being simultaneous with our time, if that makes any sense. And it probably doesn't. That's okay. So this is the first piece in the book that kind of sets up the stakes for the narrative, if narrative is the right word, and it's called The Century. A simple, perilous question. What forms does silence take in the world of today? As usual, the silence of the poor and the exploited, of seas and animals and the earth's crust, the silence of the silenced. But also silence of the mind and slow evolved connection with other minds, silence of reading, silence of thought. Thoughts unthinkable of a life outside the structures of consumption and possession, sheer incapacities of the normal mind. Thoughts of the away in distance and time, where our goods are manufactured and our pollution is thrown. Thoughts of the future, thoughts of a history without victors. In the camps, the spark of life sinks below the brightness of an ember. And the rafts of migrants in heat islands, in urban centers dissected by war, merely moving bodies tossed ghostly on the pile. Yet life goes on, doesn't it? Climatology means logic of the zone. Climate has its origins in the Greek kleinein, to slope. Climate operates by inclination in the ashen light. Silence of the winter sun, the summer sun. Silence ripening, austere silence of the world passing away in flood. Not a wave out of Hokusai, but the whole ocean elevated, overtaking land. No one says, no one sings, the horizon of heat. Spine of life rippling out of sight, indistinguishable at last from the thousand tongues of death. Shining with the secular eyes of the saint, I, the unkind. Out of silence, the thinker to be thought. Questions for the master of Denkender, dank thoughts of the ender, dark thanks of the child. Misted non-sight of the century's master on his mountaintop. Out of death, Totnaberg. Out of blackness, Schwarzwald, and nearness. The accusative destroys the in-between. All that is air melts into air. Out of the unwinding of the century and its death-brought speech, the counter to that which happens, the nearly now, we live it again, encountering the wave. Cross the streams, the centuries. So cross the streams, little Ghostbusters for you there, just in case things are getting too heavy. The master fixes his wing. From his mountaintop, he sows. Past the poet with his hands in pockets, eyes fixed on his shoes. Past Hannah in the lowlands, watching for the wave. The wave when it comes, that sweeps away everything. Cows, factories, unhappy families, owls, the necessity of caring about owls. The desert jungle leaps in the night of human forgetting. Hannah sits up late in Freiburg, in Berlin, in Paris, in New York. She writes letters to the master that she does not post. The eagle stands on the postmark, single-headed, bearing the symbol of the sun in its claws. The sun we have invited too close to the earth. It presses out the sky. No gods anymore. The poet invites the rivers that flow from every direction to the sea. The beach, the moon. The desert jungle is near. It surrounds everyone's breathing. Not so careful of the type, thinks the plagiarist, who is the poet's secret face, the face of terrified complicity. The ash from Hannah's cigarette. She writes from the night of tears in a language not her own. The calibrator listens in his bulletproof box, listening across oceans for the wave that a poet can name. Its origins as wall, as water, as soft targeted array of emigrant flesh, mad X of the world. While the master soars, terrible and blind, in the wake of the larger predator named being. Exterior television. So some of the poems have like a screenplay, exterior, interior, as part of their titles. I wish to say a word for middle age, for the heyday in the blood tamed and cooling, for carbon blowing midway to disaster on Mauna Loa, for the heart of heartlessness, the self's immigrant turned away. I wish to say that midway through our life's journey, we have misplaced literacy, the soul, right terror for angels. For a while they carried us, those characters, the survivors. We discovered with them the island. We discovered the conspiracy against boredom and acedia riding a secret submarine. Oppen, Crusoe, we say was rescued. We learned how to live together, conspiring. The first 2 or 2.5 seasons were great before the whole thing devolved into half-assed mystical bullshit. So unnecessary. There is nothing more mystical than a plane crash. There is nothing more mystical than unmarked cans of food. There is nothing more mystical than the Electoral College. There is nothing more mysterious than smooth flesh and a wrinkled brow, afraid of posing questions. A child is born and the blindfold slips off. Repeat the steps of the dance. The poet goes blind to the precipice, and the plagiarist guides his air-seeking feet down and down and down. Every breath you take, carbon. Every word you say, carbon. And I should have mentioned before I read that, the pop culture shout out there was the TV series Lost, which was a great and terrible disappointment. All right, I'm going to finish with pieces from a new manuscript, a sort of accidental manuscript. When the pandemic kind of really, settled in, when shit got real, as they say, this past March, I started writing 100 words per day and posting them on my website as a way to kind of mark the time. And I did this for 100 days, and then I decided to do other things. But so now I have this manuscript. I'm not sure what to do with it. I call it Shelter in Place. So I'm going to read you 4 100-word pieces, so you can count if you're so inclined. It covers, I guess, a period of 4 months, so one from each month. March 24th. Blank wall of the week to be climbed with the assistance of coffee and not much else. We gave up on the meritocracy a while ago, and now we're giving up on competence too. The sky at present offers social distancing from sunshine. I'm at the nerve center of nothing. I'm nobody. Who are you? To my left, orchids bloom at an angle, pinkly oblivious. We envy the plants and animals, as medieval Christians did, for not knowing sin. There's an afterlife to look forward to, as ambiguous and ominous as the present. Buckle up, folks. Belly up to the bar. April 25th. Drag myself up, out, across, up, down, over the face of the day. Iron and rust. The seam visible between inside and outside on the decayed Nissen hut where a friend plants tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchini. I'm a weight I deadlift over the day. Chicken sandwich. An hour trying to draw the Art Institute from a photograph, a lurid lion in the foreground, glowing pale gray and green. The walls watch me closely. Rain, crying. I get the news from poems, men dying miserably every day, anyway, and women. Pretending to be something I'm not. Pretending I won't decay. The day. May 29th. Night drifts into its center without anyone quite realizing it. Balance tipped from the light of dusk to the dark swelling up from the ground. Streetlights and windows, the signs of life in darkness. Life, ignorant and strong. Let these words at least add nothing to others' suffering. When will the faces that rise to the surfaces of our screens finally be seen as such? When will we sacrifice something, anything, for the sake of putting pressure on the wound? George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. Names parade after their bodies, burning like the sun. It was a beautiful day. This is the last poem from the series. June 25th. Limited, endless, the drawn boundary, the tropic, the dotted line. The vertical attacks the horizontal swallows up the vertical. The virus homes in on healthy cells, spines its proteins through walls in the lungs. The cops phalanx through occupied territory, your neighborhood or mine. The air is charged with human voices, breath, whispers, cries. The walls are covered in graffiti. The walls are messages. The walls fall inward to disclose bare terror. The sun kisses us with its knives. The water rises to meet our windows. No one is at home. The world is what we make it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. Thank you so much. The walls watch me closely, and no one is at home. But someone's still at home. And that person that's still at home is Kayla Rodney. We're looking forward to hearing from, and she's a New Orleans native. She's been studying and writing poetry for the last 15 years. She's a graduate of Lusher Charter High School, Xavier University of Louisiana, and San Diego State and University of Florida. After being displaced due to Hurricane Katrina, and then later migrating to different cities for her education, she felt a pull to write about home and the tremendous power of community, landscape, family, and water. She's the author of Swimming Home, which came out last year from Unlikely, and is currently a lecturer at Clayton State University in Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome, Kayla.
Hi, everybody. Can y'all hear me?
We can.
Perfect. I'm going to start with some pieces from the book, and then I'm going to move on to some things that have been published in other places. And Jonathan, just shoot me a message when my time is coming to a close. Is that cool?
I'm sorry, your time is coming to a close? Yep.
Just shoot me a message so I know when I need to get to stopping. So this first one is a piece I wrote in San Diego, and everybody likes when I read it, so I'm just gonna read it here too, because it seems to always do really well. So this one is called Making Groceries, which is for people who are not from New Orleans, is a phrase to talk about going grocery shopping. So making groceries. 2-day-old French bread for pudding, chopped seasoning, bay leaves, lump crab meat, smoked sausage and hot sausage. Gumbo boils over tops of pots, splashes onto stoves with roux, dark as Mississippi water. City streets reek of vodka morality overtaken by absinthe, rum rivers rushing through the quarters, les le bon temps roulé, gliding down the avenue, sending shining beads flying to the atmosphere, shooting stars that land in oak trees, purple, green, real queen whose blood is the history of Victor, mama passe, daddy paperback brown, jazz music crashing, bashing, banging, clanging to your ears at the crevices of your brain, handkerchiefs flapping in the air like doves as umbrellas bob through your cerebral cortex. The sky screams as the water breaks, washing the city clean. Black bodies bump like logs in the flood water, This is a little boy who slipped off his roof into the 9 feet. I've heard this big boom, and then all this water started rushing in. Generational ownership of the ghettos, the tapping of crushed big shot cans on brick roads beneath the child's wildly moving feet. Old tree roots like serpents break up the concrete. Bullets fall down like ash on Pompeii. Crawfish scream in boiling waters, the baby bump of the Mississippi, the history connected by fishing lines, the boom, boom, boom of open palms on Congo drums in Congo Square, dirty chained feet dancing in the Africa of their psyches, the ever-smiling voodoo doll in the fire pit. A lemonade, huck-a-buck or hucklebuck dripping down a child's wrist in the calliope, red beans and rice Mondays, pickled meat stewing over the fire, beignets covered in blow lead to sweet dreams of etouffee and psychedelic raindrops. The saxophonist waits on the riverbanks to meet his muse in the twilight, the pregnant king cake swollen with cinnamon and regeneration. Whoever buys the baby buys the next one. Red light district dancing under gas lamps on Bourbon. The moon pie, yellow messiah of night moseys through a music-filled sky, weeping for the crescent city. Pauline sweet summers filled with strawberry fumes. Alligator meat melts on the taste buds. An X, a pound of pecan, a pound of shrimp, a cup of community coffee to wash it all down. So this next one was written around the Mike Brown protests and everything that's been happening since then has kind of escalated from, I think, that moment. The Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown protests really started a lot of the things that are happening now. And a lot of the pieces that I was writing while in San Diego when I was putting this book together really resonate or really speak to that moment in time when there was a lot of mass unrest, rightful unrest around those two large events. And this is one of those pieces that I wrote. So this one's called Musings from the Condo Hood. Little white boys play with toys that little black boys can't. Plastic rifles waving along the skyline as congregated packs crowd the night. They are safe in the condo hood where white houses and white skin blend, become smooth and palatable, where any little black dot sticks out, a stain on America's work shirt. Black mamas stand on porches like lifeguards presiding over the sea. Their fanny packs full of declarations why the police should spare their child one more time. The streetlights, a flickering countdown to when all the little black boys need to make their way inside, to when all the little white boys parade through the streets wearing safety like a second skin. I'm gonna read a few more from the book, and then I want to transition to some newer stuff. I'm trying to explore some new ideas these days, so I'm kind of excited about my new pieces too. But I really like the old one. The old book is always, I'm gonna have a special place in my heart. So this next one is called Tangled. And I just like this piece, so I'm just gonna go with it. Tangled. Coffee skin glows in the dark. I drink it like I need to wake up. You play between my legs, pianist fine notes that vibrate in my vocal cords. My nails dig into your back, searching for diamonds. Love, I gravitate towards your scent in the night, a sunflower following your light across the bed. Your tongue is an oyster rolling a pearl around its shell, each finger a serpent curling around my breast. Leave rose gardens across my skin, plant it with your teeth. Tangle yourself in my limbs. I'll release you in the morning. So this next one is something that It's one of my favorite pieces because I started doing a lot of research on my city and some of the history behind some of the things that maybe some people think as mythical or more so like the word I'm looking for is like legend, but not really true. I can't think of the word for like something that people think might have potentially happened, but it just kind of sounds greater than truth or greater than fiction even. So this one is about something called placages. And for those of you who don't know what that is, for some context, it was a ball or a party where women who were of mixed race heritage, what they would call octoroons and quadroons at the time, would go oftentimes with their moms, and it would be kind of a matchmaking ceremony. And that's how you ended up with a lot of the Black women and the Creole women who lived in city proper, New Orleans city proper, as mistresses, but not wives. And they would be kind of taken care of in a way by white men who just wanted to have one of them in their home. So this is a big thing. Not a lot of like historical documentation of it, but it's known to be a highly likely situation throughout the city. So this one's called placage. 1/8 of your conscience tells you I'm beautiful. That's why lust turns in your eyes like bilge water. You rock me to the soul of my Creole on a dance floor trampled by feet in different kinds of shackles, haggled for a turn to turn a waltz with me. How much did you pay to quadroon? Do you like participating in the cakewalk you used to admire from seats shaded by oak trees, somehow heavy with fruit and reaching up to juggle the sun? I still boom bache in Congo Square where we dare to make gumbo fila ya. My ma can't know I go, but then I wipe the dust from my feet and press my hair, fair, taupe-colored girl, in order to be here with you. How many dead Black bodies bang around in the back of your mind like wind chimes? Are they loud? Do they sing the songs of women screaming at their slithering roots? The issue with the whip is that you hit yourself on the backswing. I feel how your consequences keloid under your shirt. How just 5 soft fingers on a bending waist can cage me here. I just have a couple more from the book. And if I have time, I would like to read a few new things. Do I have time for that, Jonathan?
Maybe a couple.
Okay. I'll just read one from the book then, and I'll go on to some new stuff. This one's called Passe Blanc. Mama made sure that I could pass, but I'll never pass as well as her, and that's okay. I never believed paper bag skin would open up doors. I never cared. Red, my name's not Red. I left the South for the West and browned a sugar-sprinkled pecan. There's nothing wrong with brown, the yellow leasing office boy says. I was talking about the carpet in the model unit, shaggy, 70s, hideous. I think he was talking about me. No, you're right. I just don't like it on the floor. I rub my skin and it's like touching mousse. I ask Africa to take me back and she tells me I'm too far gone, but I can always visit. I want to read one new piece. Thank you. And then I'll relinquish the floor. So I recently had this piece published in a Harpy Hybrid Review, which is a magazine or online magazine that only does hybrid works, and it's become one of my favorites to read. This piece is called Ode to Joy, and it's actually dedicated to my cousin Ashley, who is the most joyous person in the world. And I feel like to be Black and happy is such a radical thing to do, especially right now. So this poem just means a lot to me. So, Ode to Joy. Over 200 years ago, Black feet in shackles shuffled to shores they were unsure of. The jingle of chains, a precursor to the jingle of change, and coin purses used to purchase us, but still we sang into blue skies and turned the shuffle into a two-step, turned that two-step into a salsa. We are a people of transmutation. We come from a history of radical joy. When whips cracked overhead while and with the first red dye of blood, we sang, there is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There's a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. The overseers didn't know how we were gonna overcome, but we were already a choir for freedom. They asked us to sing those songs, but they didn't know we were singing revolution. When was the last time you smiled? I spoke to Joy today. She rode in with her top down. She smelled like a good night. She looked like she'd been eating well. And I said, okay, goddamn bitch, where have you been? And she said, I've been planting seeds in the turned soil of my soul. I've been weeding the garden of my spirit. I've been tending to the honey pot and coming in the morning. I've been living in today with my foot in tomorrow. I've been inhaling deeply while remembering those who can't breathe. I've been dancing in the streets while the bullet casings turn to rust around my feet. I've decided to live despite the fact they believe it impossible. Do what you need to do with this. Then she drove off in her drop top like a lit ass bitch. And all there was left to do was write this ode to Joy. Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla. Wonderful. We should all write an ode to joy, actually. Just a quick reminder, next week we have the New Year's party with Lloyd Schwartz, the unlimitable mover of words and language, Christina Marie Darling, Rick Lupert from Los Angeles, California, Jessica Wilskin from Melbourne, Australia, and Willis Gordon tuning in with his guitar, hopefully in the low tune of the blues. Thank you so much today for that wonderful feature, including Grace and Josh and Kayla, Kayla, sorry. And what a wonderful day. Blessed be the fact that we've gotten beyond this last 4 years of craziness. And at least there's one thing I can say about Joe Biden. He seems like a gentleman, a good man. So I think we're in for a good storm. And now I'm going to hand it over to my old friend and co-host, Larissa Shmailo, who's going to handle the open mic. Anyone who wants to read, please knock us up in the chat. We'll be happy to have you read. Thanks so much.
Right. That's right. There are a couple of slots open, so don't be shy, chat us up in the chat. And first of all, before we go any further, let's get another shout out, please, for Grace Cavalieri, Joshua Corey, and Kayla Rodney. 1 foot, living in today with 1 foot in tomorrow, Kayla. Thank you. That should be Lit Balm's motto. All right. So as Mark told you, you cannot miss the New Year's party on January 2nd with Lloyd Schwartz, Christina Marie Darling, Rick Lupert, Jessica Wilkinson, and music by Willis Gordon. Do not miss the January 2nd New Year's Eve party. Or it's not New Year's Eve, but it's a New Year's party. So, okay, let's go on to our open micers. Rodney A. Brown, would you grace us with a poem, please? Rodney, are we unmuting Rodney?
There we go.
I'm unmuted. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Rodney. Please give us a poem.
Okay. The pages sit in the pages of the Bible, archived obituaries, poetry. Imagine I am the stone. When you die, they say you wake up with wings on. Wake up in heaven, halo-headed and shit. There is no big to-do. You could miss it if you ain't looking, except for the wings. They used to put the dance kids on the marble floor at the mall, dodging the strands of popcorn, gift wrappers, and angry, ungrateful baby sounds. For Christmas this year, I want memories of dancing with my dead dear ones. In the dream, I am holding your hand. We are falling. I know this is a dream because you are no longer here. Gone. These are not like coins, people. It matters not that I lost so many of them at once. 4 on Wednesday, 9 on Friday. Pieces of me each of the days in between. The many men who left sooner than expected. On kisses, Granny said she will cover me. On hugs, it seems I squeezed her to death. And we stood out there, wind hugging against us so tight, the projects and its abject holding us down, the backdrop of our context, Black church family. 1. I think it is odd when people die, they poop and shit. 2. Mommy told me God got a room for us when we go. Pass on. She don't like the word died. 3. Aunts say your nails keep growing when you pass on, that you sleeping in the grave till the Christmas man come. Glad morning, days are gone. That time we all will see when living life is over, God's sunset over me. Don't worry of my going, for I have joined that wind, wrapping around you always until we meet again. I am gone up yonder, there's room prepared for you, never losing hold to memories. Way back when, remember I sang soon and very soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Rodney A. Brown. Thank you for sharing with us today, Rodney. Michael Folds, would you give us one poem, please? Can we unmute Michael? Michael Folds, can we unmute Michael?
I think I'm there.
There we go.
All
There
right.
you go. Take it away, Michael.
I'm Mike Foldis, and I'm going to read Ode to Bukowski. I'm not sure if it's light or not, but in any event, thanks for the opportunity here. I look at myself and want to hear Bukowski's voice. I hear myself and want to see Bukowski's face. How can it be so clear an eye that savages so thoroughly, yet be so true to self and sad? A sky blue dome over LA, it can be beautiful anywhere, that's the point. An arena you live in, Emerson knew it, you have it too, or you don't. I see myself and want to hear Bukowski, gravelly, loaded, but not drunk, knowing what he spits is valued junk. I'm a poet, he says, making conversation, braving what comments come his way, tortuous amusements, acid clouds and acid rain, truth burning shit. Crowds applaud. They come to hear the master tell it like it is. He in his corner, cratering between rounds, with a cold beer and lifted hand, to quiet those who think they know the survivor because they both got high. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael Foldis. Let's give a hand for Michael, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, our open mic is now full. So thank you for all of you who have stepped up. The next reader is Jen Knox. Please give us a poem, Jen.
I'm looking for Jen, excuse me. Oh, it's just Jen, okay.
All right, hello, thank you. Normally a fiction writer, so this is brave stuff for me. Jupiter. Every dream a slip of a thing, a sojourn into the ordinary, coveted past, until a deep quarantine sleep tugged Jupiter toward our small Midwestern town. I trudged toward it, of course, the planetary pool cartoon-like, its gravitational force targeting segments of me, leaving the rest enchanted, confused. I checked the news, the charts, the trends, and I stared out my window just as many of us have at 4 a.m. I saw Jupiter, a slip of a thing, with Saturn in its gaze, surrounded by stars in a sharp, dark morning sky. And I sat tall. A conductor, I pulled the planets apart and knit the space between them. The delicate force between my fingers erased fragments to dreams, walked me outside to better see, to better feel whole.
Thank you so much, Jen. Thank you for your courage in speaking up and sharing with us today. Thank you very, very much. Okay, next up we have Sue Silver. Sue, give us a poem, Sue.
All right, thank you. This is a poem called She Rides the Waves. At Waimea Beach, the surf breaks far from shore. I paddle out to where other surfers bob in the water, sit astride their boards, wait for the waves that come in groups of 4 or 5, break and roll to shore. I am 13. The boards are long, 8 feet, 2 inches thick, fiberglass with one fin. They are hard to maneuver, swimming out with them, but present a dance floor riding them in. Padding forward with everything I have, I bolt upright, moving to grab some kind of balance, both arms waving, stepping into it. Fear and elation, joy and misery, my breath short and fast. Eating the air, the blue of it all, fat water wave curling under me, shooting me forward, white surf altering my trajectory at any minute. With fear biting my ankles, I straighten up as the board rushes forward. I see the shore ahead and other surfers. My heart stammers with dread lest I pitch in the wave. A living being now takes me fast, fast, fast down its long mane of blue. A dream of delivery at Waimea.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Surf's up. Okay, great. Wonderful. Last but not least, we have John on iPad. Tell me your last name, John, please. John on iPad, please. Who is this, please? We are now unmuting John on iPad.
I'm hitting ask to unmute, John. Are you seeing a message? There we go.
Thank you very much. My last name is Welsh, and Grace, it's nice to see you. I'm going to read a poem that, just the quick backstory, it's 16 lines, but the backstory, the title is Jackson in 1910, and this is when Halley's Comet came through Jackson, Mississippi, or was visible from Jackson, Mississippi, and Mary Chapin Carpenter wrote a song about it, which spans generations, because obviously she was not born in 1910, but it came back around while she was alive. So here she is imagining what grandpa and grandma or somebody told her about the story of Halley's Comet coming through Jackson, Mississippi in 1910. By the time you'd become who you are, you were beyond my orbit. I'm just a flare those with a scope vast as Hubble might see, bringing the past into our presence. That place where I love you and now know why. I left you on the corner, breaking your heart. And now that I think of it, mine. This small signal means nothing beyond the fury in my breast, sounding its depth, giving voice. If I could escape gravity, I would catch your tail, burning through the heavens with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank
John
you.
Welsh, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, John.
John Welsh, thank you for your poem. Wonderful. All right, that is our show. I'd like to once again thank Grace Cavalieri, Joshua Corey, and Kayla Rodney for their features and fantastic readings tonight. Thank you so very much. And to my co-hosts, any last words, Cassandra, Mark, Jonathan?
Yeah, just don't miss us on the New Year's party with Lloyd Schwartz, Christina Marie Darling, Rick Lupert, Jessica Wilkinson, and Willis Gordon with his blues guitar. And yeah, thank you all for such a wonderful show tonight. I think we're moving into the future with a new hope. Let's just embrace this and make the most creative works we can do, and just poetry and love, baby. Poetry and love. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Poetry and
everyone.
love.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Wear your masks. Stay safe.